how everything is connected. What would have happened if the Turks and Persians had not closed the access to spices from the east, and that the Portuguese did not invent caravels and discover how the Atlantic Ocean behaves? Would the Spanish king and queen have sent Christopher Columbus to the unknown sea with the task of discovering the western route to India, China and Japan? Did the Spanish do it for the US? Of course not. But Columbus's expeditions were certainly a necessary part of the process that first led to the discovery of the American continent, then started the era of colonization, and then to the sequence of events that ultimately created the USA as it is today. Spain's history is long and glorious, and a little bloody like every empire. Born at the end of the Reconquista with the union of Castile and Aragon, Spain has survived devastating wars and centuries of political turmoil, as well as golden ages and religious movements. From its rediscovery and colonization of the New World, through its world-spanning empire, through its contribution to culture and the romance of life, to its participation in countless wars, Spain is one of the few nations that can claim to have made a comprehensive impact on global civilization and thus on the United States. In 1492, Christopher Columbus stumbled upon the New World, and the USA is the New World's greatest child. After that event, Spain will become the first true world power in history. Columbus was followed by adventurers of all kinds, including conquistadors like Cortés and Pizarro, who were only interested in a quick buck, but also missionaries and colonists with longer-term plans. The Spanish led the world in this age of discovery, accumulating vast amounts of wealth from their numerous colonies. At its height, the Spanish Empire counted possessions across the entire known world, from large parts of North and South America and small parts of Europe to various cities in North Africa and the entire East Indies. It has been said, and rightly so, that the sun always shone somewhere in the Spanish Empire. The Spanish could not be uninterested in the events that took place in their neighborhood during the Declaration of American Independence. On the website of the American Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it is written as follows.
The United States established diplomatic relations with Spain in 1783. Spain and the United States are close allies and have an excellent relationship based on shared democratic values, including the promotion of democracy and human rights.
But not everything was always so idyllic. The foundations of the future conflict were created in the period before 1700, when the Spanish were the first Europeans to create permanent settlements in the territories that today belong to the United States of America. Back in 1521, the Spanish founded the city of San Juan in Puerto Rico, and 35 years later they settled in Florida. Later, the Spanish settled in large numbers in California and New Mexico, while they also had their own colonies in Texas and Arizona. During the American War of Independence, Spain declared war on Great Britain as an ally of France and provided supplies and ammunition to the Continental Army. However, Spain was not a direct ally of the US. She hesitated to recognize the independence of the United States because she did not trust the revolutionaries. Spain controlled the territories of Florida and Louisiana, located in the south and west of the United States, and had a justified fear of American expansion into the territories that were part of their empire. After the war, the Spanish tried to create an American Indian state that would serve as a buffer zone towards the US. In addition, Spain denied vital American navigation rights on the Mississippi River, provided arms to the Indians, and recruited friendly American settlers in the sparsely populated territories of Florida and Louisiana. The only thing that was good in the relationship during that period was the establishment of trade between two countries, which was not possible before while the USA was a British colony. From 1808 to 1833, Spanish America was engulfed in the wars of liberation. Most of the new nations ended up under dictatorships and military juntas. In the eyes of Spain, part of the blame for these wars was borne by the US, and they believed that the United States wanted to control the entire New World at the expense of Spain. Spanish power was in decline due to the attack of Napoleon's army on Spain in the period from 1807 to 1814. In 1819, the two countries signed an agreement whereby Spain handed over Florida to the United States. The treaty also settled the border dispute along the Sabine River in Texas and firmly established the boundary of American territory and claims across the Rocky Mountains and west to the Pacific Ocean. All this in exchange for a sum of $5 million that the Americans were to pay in addition to giving up territorial claims to parts of Texas west of Sabine River and other Spanish areas. The Cuban question dominated relations between Spain and the United States during the second half of the 19th century. The United States sought to expand its trade and investment in Cuba during this period, and Spanish officials implemented a series of commercial regulations designed to discourage trade relations between Cuba and the United States. Additional conflict and rivalry were created when Spain annexed the independent Dominican Republic. When the American Civil War began, the Union feared that the Confederacy from the South might gain support from some of the European powers. Through their representatives in Spain, they emphasized that it was the Southerners who demanded the annexation of Cuba. In the end, however, America decided to tear off a few pieces of the faltering Spanish Empire for itself. The Spanish-American War began in April 1898. The hostilities were stopped in August of that year after the decisive victories of the American Navy, and the Treaty of Paris was signed in December of the same year. The former Spanish colonies of Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam became the property of the United States, and Spain renounced any right to sovereignty over Cuba. The Treaty of Paris was the end for the Spanish Empire and the beginning for the US as a world power. Is it necessary to say that the relations between the two countries after this war were not very friendly? But trade knows no borders, and when it has interest, it does not care about friendships. A series of trade agreements were signed, and American tourists began to arrive in Spain during this period. Spain remained neutral during World War I, and Spanish industry and exports greatly benefited from the war. Culturally, during the 20s, relations remained ambivalent. The Spanish considered the USA to be a young, strong and healthy nation whose actions are dominated by the reality that Spain lacks in its foreign policy. Some Spanish writers called the USA a colossal child with an insatiable appetite. Americans considered the Spanish to be conservative and inert when it comes to modernization. During the Spanish Civil War, the US remained officially neutral and did not allow arms sales to either side. However, some parts of the American economy supplied Francisco Franco's nationalists with oil and trucks on credit, which proved to be very important for the final outcome of the war. On the other hand, some American writers fought in the international brigades, but verses proved to be less important and effective than oil and trucks. In 1939, Ernest Hemingway wrote his famous work For Whom the Bell Tolls, about how no man is an island. Although officially neutral, Franco's Spain sympathized with the Axis powers during the World War II. As Germany weakened, so did those sympathies. After the end of the Second World War, Spain suffered from the economic consequences due to its isolation from the international community and was not granted admission to the United Nations. President Harry Truman was a very strong opponent of Franco, calling him an evil anti-Protestant dictator. Truman withdrew the American ambassador, but diplomatic relations were not formally severed. He also refused to give them any help through the Marshall Plan. However, as the Cold War escalated, support for Spain skyrocketed in Pentagon, Congress, the business community, and other influential elements. The importance of Spain, which was necessary due to its strategic position in the Cold War, made the USA become a saving arm over time. The Pact of Madrid, signed in September 1953 by Franco, Spain and the United States, was a landmark effort to break Spain's international isolation after World War II. The US has promised to provide economic and military aid to Spain. In return, the United States was allowed to build and use air and naval bases on Spanish territory. Spain was subsequently admitted to the United Nations in 1955. American military bases were not popular in Spain. Only 1 in 10 people supported it. However, after the death of General Franco, US President Nixon called him a loyal friend and ally of the US. Franco's death in 1975 led to the restoration of the constitutional monarchy in the form of King Juan Carlos I. With a carefully selected council of advisors and the support of the people, the young king proved to be a sensible agent for change. Spain became a member of NATO in 1982, a member of the European Union in 1986, and a faithful ally of the USA in all important matters. Today, Spain is a modern, democratic and prosperous country, and thanks to this, the Spanish could once again return to long siestas and dreams of past glory and celebrate their rich cultural heritage with world-famous festivals and holidays. For Americans, Spain is one of the favorite vacation destinations with friendly people, beautiful beaches, and a place where you can run with the bulls in the street. It reminds them a little of Mexico because of the same language. And as for the Spanish, they are so used to foreigners and tourists that they don't really care where are you from. They might ask an American why they like guns, big cars, or how the American healthcare system works in the US, but it is more out of curiosity than concern. The Spanish really don't like to worry about anything other than soccer. I hope you find this video interesting and of some value for you. Please excuse my Tarzan English and please like, share and subscribe.